get to this one, so that's all good. Let me see. Maybe if I, oh, okay, there we go. That covers everything. That's got it all in frame. All right, so I think it's good on this one, but there's no laptop in L1 right now, so I don't know who's supposed to bring the laptop for that.
Okay, I'll go check on her.
Thank you so much.
He's in the building, he's in the restroom.
Okay, perfect.
In fact, I think he wants.
And let's start down to the door.
He still thinks that it's an L space.
Uh-oh. Okay.
Where's the space?
Yeah. Yeah, very appreciate it.
There's been the prize for biggest panel.
That's okay. We're here. Almost made it. Oh, yeah. That's okay. Happens. Do you guys want to make yourselves comfortable?
Oh, or should we sit down front at the beginning and we study?
Whatever you want.
Can you sit in the chairs? Because that's where the camera
Yeah.
is.
Where do you want to spend? Everybody's want to sit. Oh, we're gonna sit?
Yeah, you're up front.
Did everybody get the handouts if you want? These handouts here.
Amy, how are you? Allison,
You should be able to try to go there. Yes.
Sorry, public.
Let's see.
And that's real.
Be blocking the screen for people on that side.
No.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Tell us if we are, we can
Like
shift.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, I just work for the folks online, you know, from the screen.
We're just recording it?
Oh, okay.
Oh, you mean, yes, but we
Yeah,
can
the
see it,
image.
yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
maybe just. They're flag.
No, you're good. This is the projector right here. Yeah. I mean, I can see, you know, if there's anything really low on the slides, we might lose it, but right down that side is great.
It's.
However you want to sit. Yes.
Oh, yeah. Good.
I think so.
And see their paper.
Yeah. Right. You went to look for Richard, so.
But I hear you know. All right, so very excited. just like that.
There was something, hold on, another one.
Should be a long on there. I think we have.
Right away.
Right, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us here today. My name is Lindsay Sabadosa. I'm the state representative for the 1st Hampshire District, and today I am serving as the moderator for this panel. Thank you. Don't more to applaud. Just to start off, I would like to do a little bit of housekeeping first and foremost. I know that you've been here for the day and you probably know a few things, but the exit is right here. There's another exit in the back. Door to the outside follows right after. Bathrooms are a little bit tricky to find, but if you take a right and go down the hall, you will find all gender restrooms available to you, as well as water. Please feel free to get up and move around as you need to. It's a hot day and we want you to stay comfortable with us. So we are here today to talk about the future of Western Mass Rail, from grassroots advocacy to reality. Over the last 10 years, we have seen tremendous progress. I know that it can feel like slow progress, but we have seen tremendous progress in the expansion of rail in Massachusetts. From the Valley Flyer, which has just proven more and more popular, to actual funding coming in to truly realize East-West Rail. And of course, studies for Northern Rail and real momentum to push those projects forward. This is a critical moment. So I'm delighted that we have so many good people on today's panel who will share a little bit about what they are doing. I'm going to, however, start off by inviting Ben Heckscher to come up and give us a brief overview of passenger rail in Western Massachusetts so that we can set the stage. After that, we're going to go through and introduce our fabulous panelists and have a bit of a discussion. So Ben, if you don't mind.
So my name is Ben Heckscher. I'm the co-founder of Trains of the Valley. What I'm going to do is spend about 10 minutes and give a very, very brief sort of overview of where we are with passenger rail in Western Mass, and where we've come from and where we are today. Before I do that, I just want to call out two people, Representative Sabadosa and Senator Comerford, who both graciously agreed to come here. They've been absolute steadfast supporters of everything we've all tried to do to get passenger rail in Western Mass since day one that they came to office. And I just want to thank them for that. So, just to sort of set the stage here, I want to go back 12 years to about 2014 as to what things looked like when this sort of all kicked off. You can clearly see this is sort of a diagram of the state showing rail services, not necessarily train tracks per se. Springfield right there at the center. That green line running north from New York is the Vermonter service, which at that time came to Springfield, ran east to Palmer, didn't stop in Palmer, and then ran straight up into Vermont. That was one train a day. That black line running east and west there is another Amtrak service called the Lakeshore Limited, which offered effectively east-west service one time a day. And that the service that ran south of Springfield ran a couple times a day, 6 or 8 times a day, operated by Amtrak. And the dashed lines are services that were either in planning, in this case in construction. The Vermonter was going to be rerouted at this time to go to Northampton and Greenfield and Holyoke. Holyoke isn't on the map there because it wasn't part of the plan in 2014. And the Hartford line was under construction. The dotted line that runs from Boston to Springfield to New Haven was part of a study that was kicked off around 2012 called the Northern New England Intercity Rail Initiative. And that was the first effort with the study to create East-West Rail. That study recommended 8 trains a day on that corridor. At that time, with various reasons I won't go into time, they did not move forward with the recommendations of that study. Now we're going to fast forward 12 years to where we are today. What's interesting here now is north of Springfield, the Vermonter now runs to Holyoke, Northampton, and Greenfield. It's still 1 time a day, but now we have additional service, the Valley Flyer, which takes you to New Haven, where you can connect with either Metro North or with Amtrak service to point south. Running east and west now, you see this dotted red line. This is what hopefully will come in time, West-East Rail service running not only to Pittsfield, which was in the East-West Rail study, but also further to Albany, Rensselaer, and points west. And then again, back to this blue dash line, the inland route. This is the first east-west or west-east rail, service that will commence in around 2030. So in 2030, we have the first west-east rail service operating between South Station, Springfield, and New Haven, where again, you can connect with Amtrak or Metro North. I lost my place, sorry. So additionally, what's also in planning is the extension of the Vermonter to Montreal. This project has been going on for probably 15 years now. It's very complicated to go across the border post 9/11, and it's now doubly complicated with the relationship between Canada and the US that now exists. Now, proposed new services, which have only come up very recently, Amtrak is very interested in increasing service from Springfield to New York. There's even talk of up to 14 trains a day running direct Springfield to New York. I don't think there's going to be 14 trains a day immediately in 2033, but that's a lot of service. If we get half of that running straight to New York, that's a lot. What also is shown on here for the first time is direct service from Greenfield and Northampton to New York, also in 2033. If that comes, that will also be amazing, because the Valley Flyer was a great step forward, but people don't really enjoy having to get off the train in New Haven and then getting on another train. And then the Boston and Albany route, which is under study at the moment, or shouldn't really call it a study. They have to prepare something called a service development plan, which is going on now for 2 years. That will come in a few years after we get the service running on the inland route. And then importantly, also, we have a completely new line showing up here, the Northern Tier line, which was an effort that was kicked off by Senator Comerford basically the day she stepped into office. And she's been advocating for with a group of people, including myself, to push this forward, day by day, month by month, year by year. But the challenge with rail is this stuff takes time. You want to launch a new bus service, maybe 1 month, 2 months, you need equipment, as we heard in the forum this morning, you might wait a year or two. This kind of stuff can take years or even decades to make happen. Just because the tracks are there doesn't mean it's easy to run a train, unfortunately, in this country. So that's sort of the flavor of where we are today. It looks impressive, but you have to remember many of these services are only 1 train a day. This isn't Europe where they run 1 train an hour. This is, a great step up from what we have. And the hope is that over time, people will move away from cars, taking the train longer, medium distances, get to New York in particular, along the corridor that runs north and south, and obviously the corridor that runs east and west. And the one thing I always like to point out, which I love, is if you go into Springfield Union Station today, there are 2 ticket machines operated by CT Rail, which operates part of the Hartford line. On that ticket machine, there's a button that says Yankee Stadium. You can buy a ticket from Springfield to Yankee Stadium today. You can't buy a ticket to Fenway. which is amazing when considering we live in Massachusetts. So that's my 10-minute overview of where we are with rail. And now we're going to hear from our colleagues and the applicants.
Thank you so much, Ben, for that overview. To kick things off, I'd like to move through each of the different advocate groups that are represented here today. We have Mo Bresley and Senator Comerford, who will be speaking about Northern Tier Passenger Rail. We have, of course, Ben Dexter that we've just heard about, from co-founder of Trains in the Valley. We have Ben Hood and Ann Miller, co-founders of Citizens for the Palmer Rail Stop. And then we have Brian Ford, Robert Daly, and Richard Holtzman, who are speaking for the Southern Hilltowns Berkshire Rail Stop Alliance. So if we could go through and start with each of those groups, I'd love to hear how your group formed and where is the momentum now? You want to start with the mic? There should be a number of them spread.
Who wants to start? Who wants to start?
Why don't we start at this end and then move down?
Okay. Again, my name is working. My name is Ben Heckscher. Zane Lebowski and I started a group called Trains in the Valley about 10 years ago. We're sort of based out in the Northampton area, mostly focused on the Vermonter Valley Flyer and East West Rail. One of the reasons we started the group was there was very little information at that time available online, in particular from the Mass DOT, on what was going on with passenger rail. There was just no information. So we launched a website and we started posting information about this, that, and the other thing to make people aware, to show people how to use the service, to know what was coming. Even today, we probably offer more information than you can find in many other places if you're trying to get an answer, even something obscure, on using passenger rail in Western Mass.
I think it would be more helpful for Senator Comerford to start if I wanted to talk about the Northern Tier Rail. So if you want to give it.
Why don't we go down, then I'll start and go back to
We
you.
were gonna do one from each group, so if you wanna do this one, and then we can come back.
Okay, perfect, yeah. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for the organizers. Thanks for the facilitation. So my district is the Hampshire Franklin Worcester district. And the way I got started really was from constituents. While I was campaigning for office in 2018, I heard about the tracks that were down along what was called the Northern Tier or Route 2 rail. I heard stories from families whose fathers or mothers commuted into Boston, or they went to see the game. They went to see the Red Sox play, and I did my research and I found that in fact tracks were down and they were running till about 1968. And then I read about a rail, it was called Rabbit Run, that made 19 stops daily round trip from Athol to Springfield. And then I learned about the Northampton rail that was frozen, lots because of the Quabbin. And I started to really do my own rail research as part of my representation of constituents. So when I got in, Ben is right, I filed a bill for the restart of passenger rail along the Route 2 corridor, working with constituents, and then working with the delegation. This is Hampshire, Franklin, and Hamden. We dug in also to Valley Flyer, which was at the time a pilot, and Amtrak and MassDOT were trying to figure out whether or not this pilot service would flip to permanent. And of course, I was interested also in the Southern Tier, East-West, and the whole rail ecosystem. So that's how I got started. But really, the credit is to constituents, people like Ben and Trains in the Valley, and folks who remember a really robust and different time in our region and wanted that back. So that's how it happened. And it turns out this was the first bill I passed in 2019.
Yeah, hi. I'm from Williams College, and if you know anything about Williams, it's fair pretty much. And because of that, pretty much that's how Amherst College came to be, which we don't talk about a lot. But yeah. at Williams, it's been a few years before I came to Williams that some students started advocating for the Northern Tier restoration. And it was at first a very kind of something that people didn't really think would happen. But with the help of legislators and everything, we have been seeing a lot of developments. So people have been, more trying to make it work. At CLIA, the Center for Learning and Action, at Williams, we formed the Transit Hub, which is a bunch of students, including myself and others, who have been advocating for the Northern Tier Rail. We have been also advocating for any sort of better connectivity, which is a bit difficult, as we will probably talk about later. But yeah, I'm very new to this, but it's a very exciting time, to be honest, especially seeing the developments really like in the past few months.
Yes.
Oh, I'm Ben Hood from Citizens for Palmer Rail Thought. I've been doing this for about the same amount of time, but completely independently. And I think that's one of the things about this panel. It's very exciting to have this many people doing this many things across Western Massachusetts. When we started our campaign, it was because there was a study done by Massachusetts, Vermont, and Connecticut called the Northern New England City Rail Initiative. This was going to be New York City, Boston, Montreal. Springfield was going to be a crossroads for that. But they didn't look west. So it was Springfield, it was the line. We all know Worcester's the line most of the time in Massachusetts. Anything west of Worcester, you root for the Yankees, you go to New York City, because Boston is interested in being connected to us. But we were people in Boston. And in Palmer, we were part of this study. And I think the reason we were part of the study is because there had been a movement in Palmer for a long time to bring back service. The last time trains ran in Palmer was before Amtrak, 1970, 71. Boston and Albany was the train line. That went away. Amtrak didn't pick it up. And so we even had that train that Ben talked about where it went to Amherst and stopped. It went to Springfield and stopped. It didn't travel on the other side of the river to places because those tracks were so degraded. And so we watched the train, shuttle around our downtown, but it didn't open its doors. And now they're studying having us get train service. I was the library director, and so I talked to people and I heard about this. And so we started organizing and pushing. That study didn't go anywhere except to the shelf. Ben once sent an entire copy of it to Governor Baker, massive, thousands of pages. It was a real study. It had all the information about when the trains would stop in all of these places. And we were very excited, but it wasn't going anywhere. And now it's been 11 years, but it was revived as a rail study. Our campaign just kept on working locally, hammering away. What we've done is, because I don't want to go on forever, we've listed all these things we tried to do on a sheet that we passed out to you about the tactics we used in Palmer, most of which we thought were effective in some way, a few less effective. And the main thing was to just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And once we went to these bigger meetings, and met people like Ben, and we met people from Chester in this group, we thought, and we met someone from the Berkshires who runs the train campaign, which is actually more focused on the Connecticut, New York City service up to the Berkshires, through Connecticut on a line that isn't being used now for that purpose. We thought we can put this into a regional context, and we're there now. I think we're in that regional group, and we're hoping that this is the point when we really actually begin to see the big payoff on this. At least we've got some way along the track. We want to get all the way down the track.
Southern Hill County Berkshire Rail Stop Alliance.
Yes, hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. I'm Bob Daly. I'm here with my fellow advocate, Dr. Rich Holzman, sitting next to me here. Piggyback on Ben Hood's remarks. We participated in all of those same studies over the years. And when we started, Dr. Holzman was 77, and I was a mere 74. But as Ben Heckscher pointed out, that's okay if it takes another 10 to 15 years to go to reality. That's fine. We're okay with that because it's going to build the future that our young people need to go forward. I'm very encouraged by the most recent presentations that we were privileged to attend with Richie Neal a few weeks ago, and just as recently, last night at a PVPC commissioners meeting was an updated presentation by Andrew Koziol, who's the transit director and essentially in charge of West East Rail. And among other things, we had many encouraging things to say, but among others is the focus on what they're calling the corridor identification plan, which kicked off, permitted by FRA this past January, and needs to be completed within 2 years. So that tells us that the much talked about stakeholder hearings that they're going to have will probably occur during 2027, which is not that far away. And essentially, we're here today to, among other things, hopefully capture your contact information so that you be willing to endorse a letter of support that we've developed that we're going to be putting together, hopefully with the 90 communities that Senator Joe and Lindsay and also our Senator out west, Paul Mark, represent those 90 communities. That's our goal, to get signed signatures on these letters of support and bring them to Governor Healy. So that Governor Healy will put her thumb on the scale with Mass DOT and have them focus on what we're calling right now an intermediate passenger rail stop. The only place that makes logistical sense for that would be Chester. Out of the 90 towns that these great gals represent and the 57 communities that Senator Paul Mark represents, there's a catchment area, as Ben Heckscher calls it. He's got a map, perhaps it's up on the screen behind me, I don't know. The catchment area that includes 19 Hilltown communities, which are within 20 miles of Chester Station. Chester Station is where Dr. Holzman and I first joined this quest as trustees of Chester Railway Station. And at some point we became aware of, I call him General Heckscher, with good reason, and got connected with him. And ever since then, we've been hanging on his coattails. I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you to all the panelists for describing your organizations and the work that you're doing. And one of the themes that I heard running through all of those remarks was this idea of advocacy. And so I'd like to pose the question, in your work thus far, what milestone gives you the most hope for the future of passenger rail in Western Massachusetts? Maybe we could hear from some of the panelists who haven't yet spoken. So maybe we'll start with Chester. Is there someone who'd like to take the question?
Yes, I'm Richard Holzman, and
I'm sorry, would you mind just using the mic so that we know?
I'm using the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry, there we go, apologies.
Can you hear me okay?
Is the mic on?
I just saw people.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
I guess I'm at liberty to say that probably the oldest person in the room, and certain things become a little muddled as you get older, but they also become more clear as you get older. One of the things that's very clear to me is the imperative of West East Rail, and indeed rail throughout Western Massachusetts, north, south, east, west, and in particular, listening to Senator Comerford, she talked about her constituencies and what the constituents and what they said about going to ball games in Boston and getting on and off the train, enjoying it for business and culture. You could still hear the same things in Chester, as it was in the 19th century. So it is in the 21st century. That location, the Hilltowns, the place where you need West East Rail stop. Not all the people in can go as a practical matter to Pittsfield to catch a train to anywhere because you've already got some sort of gridlock there in those old streets and city. And in the countryside, in the small towns, in Chester, okay, we have connectivity with all the towns in the region historically, and I won't get into too much of the detail, but historically, the women ran the farms and the farmers came down to work on the railroad. If it was not for the Chester railroad locus there, it would have taken, they say, about 75 years to achieve what they achieved in Chester much earlier by engineering the way up the Berkshire Grade, down the Berkshire Grade, and so on. And for different reasons. And it was very prosperous in the 19th century. And it fell into difficult times when they closed it in the 60s, when they ended rail stop in Chester. And we are absolutely convinced we have developers that are interested in Chester, particularly because of the location. And we're open to another place in the hill towns being a place if it can be justified as being better than Chester. But clearly, there has to be a stop between Springfield and Pittsfield. And it's just midway. Very interesting that Palmer is about 22 miles east of Springfield. Chester is about 25 miles west of Chester, and Pittsfield is 25 miles west of Chester. So Brittany and Bob and Ben, and I guess the three of us figured out that it must have been with the old wood-burning locomotives and then the coal-burning locomotives that was the best place to stop 25 miles apart, fuel repair and so on. But in any case, we are passionate about it. We're determined to do it. And I've said publicly, so I'll say it again, I have more years behind me than I have ahead of me. But we are going to make sure that there's a rail stop in the rural area from Springfield to Pittsfield, and it's good and healthy for the area, for socioeconomic and cultural development, for all the attractions of that area and places to live reasonably.
Thank you so much. Anne, would you share with us what milestone has given you the most hope for the future of passenger rail in Western Massachusetts?
Yeah, I feel like Ann Miller, Citizens for Palmer Rail Stop. I think we're a good example of the success of advocacy because we got ourselves in the earlier study Ben Hood mentioned, the Northern New England Intercity Rail Initiative. Initially, we were just a tentative stop. So our first goal was to become an actual final stop in that study. That study, as he said, got shelved. However, we kept pushing and we did a number of the advocacy things you can see there. Our website is on the back. We now have a conceptual design. It's on the sheet. So we've actually kind of, we hope, succeeded in getting a rail stop. So we're a fairly small town, but we are a regional center. So I think we're a good example that advocacy works. And when we were included in the later East-West study, MassDOT said we were included due to advocacy. So we felt like that was a huge pat on the back for us.
Fabulous, thank you. And Mo, I'm going to ask you the same question. Is there a moment where something that's giving you hope for the future of passenger rail?
Yeah, so something that gave
Just like it's an ice cream bar, right? Yes, hold it close.
So what I heard from other students at Williams, and myself included, was when we got the link for 1-3 bus, really a lot of people kind of had a hope that something could happen in that area. A lot of people think of the Northern Berkshires as a almost dying area, dying region. People are getting older and people are leaving the region. But getting the new bus kind of gave people in the local community more hope that something could happen. So to me, that was like a big thing. And once it started, I actually did see other people on the team within Williams do even more advocacy than before for the rail service. So that was very interesting to me. I took on a more work toward like the bus service because we wanted it to last. Because if within just a few months we saw all that increased hope, then I would want it to continue. And my other people on the team are really helping just make sure that the Northern Tier Rail would happen. So that I would say.
You. And Senator Comerford, building off of this advocacy, as the recipient of so much of it, can you share a moment where community feedback helped to change your mind or your way of thinking about the issue?
I think I'd rather, if it's okay, I'd love to talk about how community feedback changed Boston's mind. You know, I think, again, I actually think the reason we got as far, and I think Ben and Mo agree, the reason that we are as far as we are with something that takes a very, very long time is that the route, we call it the Route 2 corridor. So stretching from North Adams into Fitchburg, every single municipality advocated with the governor. And then more than 100 stakeholders, and that's bank presidents and hospital presidents and small business owners and chambers and legislators. And, you know, together we sent letters, we had meetings, the students went into Boston from Williams and met with the governor. There was an uprising from the Route 2 corridor that said, all the other rail is important. We're not competing. We're a big region. We're 4 counties. You have to pay attention to this northern belt where there are tracks down, where there's freight running. And it was the advocacy of people, collective action that changed. And the moment that was sort of a high water mark was we were in the middle of this big study that yielded 6 unbelievably interesting potential ways to do Route 2 rail, including an all-electric service with lots of local stops. In the middle of that, we had a big rally action where Williams made possible all of these colorful posters, and then more than 100 people came to the Greenfield train station, and we together delivered these letters, which was a collective statement to pay attention to this part of the region equitably, right? So we were calling for regional equity. And we continue to do that now. There's an economic development study happening right now as a result of MassDOT saying, okay, all right, we're going to listen to you. We're going to figure this out. And, you know, and of course, nothing is a given at this point in a rail development. Ben said this really well, but what is true is that people are hanging together because they're organized. And this is not me, this is the community.
And Ben, can I ask the same question of you? Can you share a moment where community feedback, where you saw that it changed policymakers' minds?
Sure. So one vivid memory of many memories I have over the years is around 2018 or 19, MassDOT initiated a plan for an effort to upgrade what's called the state rail plan. And MassDOT scheduled a public meeting to get in-person feedback. And as I recall, the meeting was scheduled in Worcester. And the state legislators in Western Mass were not happy with that. So they stepped forward and they then scheduled a meeting in Springfield. The advocates then put their heads together and said, well, 2 meetings is not enough. So we went online and we started scheduling meetings in libraries across Western Mass. And by the time we were done, we had 22 meetings from the Northern Berkshires to Southern Hampden County to Eastern Hampshire County. And some of those we had 12 people. Some of those we had 2 people. I remember going to one meeting in West Springfield, which was myself. Nobody walked in the door after 10 minutes until someone stepped forward in a suit. And I didn't know who this gentleman was. It was the mayor of West Springfield. I never met him. And we had a great 30-minute talk. Sometimes you never know what's going to happen. But the beauty of that was I can only imagine what they were seeing in Eastern Mass when they saw this list online getting longer and longer and longer with the 2 official meetings at the top and 22 more meetings down below. In the end, I believe there were somewhere around 350 public comments submitted into that plan. And that doesn't happen unless you push people to do that. And we did.
Thank you, Ben. That is a beautiful story, and I really appreciate how you took, how you had your advocacy that had already created something, and then you made it even bigger and brought more and more people into the fold. And I think that that is really how advocacy works. And our panelists have done a great job of explaining that none of this has been a short-term project for them. But I imagine there are people who are sitting in the audience today who might be new to this advocacy. And so I do wonder, if someone is new, why is this the issue for them to get involved in? Why is this the thing they should be pushing for and spending their time on? How is Western Massachusetts the place to focus on rail advocacy? Let's start with Ben Hood.
Oh, I don't know that it is actually, because that's where I started.
Ben?
I started, I was just about getting a train to Palmer because there was a study of a train to Palmer that was going to link us to New York City and Boston, and there's nothing that would be better. Actually, Montreal was part of that study, which would have been even better than just the US. So we're like becoming like a real place with trains in it. North America is not a real place with trains in it compared to Asia and Europe. Frankly, there are places in Africa, North Africa, which have better train services than we do in this country. Mo said something interesting, which was that he likes this 413 link 413 bus. I'm the PBTA rep for Palmer as a delegate from our town council member who's supposed to go to the PBTA meetings. I do it. I've done it for a while. And the reason I do that is because as I got into the train advocacy, I realized that we needed a lot more than trains. We needed a way people could move around in this area. I came from Boston. There's tons of different ways to get around in Boston, but there's not as many ways to get around here. There's communities that are dead spaces. Even between Worcester and Springfield, there's a lot of communities where you can't get from one place to another unless you walk or get a bike, or have a friend who can drive you. And so we wanted something better than that. In the town of Ware, they created a microtransit service, Waybod Connector, and it's incredibly successful. And MassDOT supports it, and it's a model. And so I got to work with them and learn from them about how we could be, in addition to that, we get the train, they link to us. The PBTA does serve Palmer and Ware. It doesn't serve anybody else in the region, not even Munson, not even, towns like just over the border. So we wanted that too. We want more of that. Now they've been linked, adding PBTA, been adding services like Ware, Belchertown, Holyoke. That's amazing. And it's very successful, as we heard this morning in the RTA breakout session. And I think that as a transit advocate now, rather than a rail advocate, I think everybody should be involved in all aspects of how these communities link up. Link 413, make it a success. Bus from Amherst to Worcester, it is a success. Don't have to make it a success, just have to push it out there and make sure everybody knows that from UMass to Worcester, you can move around now, and you couldn't until PBTA created that bus. And so you do all of that, and then you add in the train spines up on Route 2 and down in the southern area where we have all these big cities like Worcester, Springfield. And, we have the second and fourth biggest cities in Massachusetts in Worcester and Springfield. And so, in New England, second and fourth. Think of that. Only Providence is bigger than Springfield, and Boston's the biggest city in New England. And this is our state, and we're not linking those. And a lot of us started outrage about that. We need that to be a train link. It shouldn't just be Boston down through the, Providence, which is big, and then the, wildlands of Rhode Island and Connecticut. It should be west and down. And so all of that will create all of these other transit opportunities for people to connect in, and will create a lot of economic development. Transportation advocates should all be together. That's
Brian, can we bring you into the conversation as the chair of the Just Select Board? How do you think that Western Mass is uniquely poised to benefit Israel right now?
Sure. So, as you might be able to tell, I am not somebody that's been doing this for a decade plus, from the ripe young age of 77. Western Mass, and for those of you that are students that are younger, that maybe grew up here or are relatively new here, you probably heard the tall tales of the good old days, when there were the paper mills, when there were the bowling alleys on Main Street, when there were the pharmacies down Main Street, but there was a little bit more to do in this region. And you only were able to experience that vision of this idyllic former Western Mass through the stories of our elders, through the stories that I heard from these gentlemen right here. Western Mass is very, very much poised for the benefit of this because West East Rail, in my personal view, and this is the argument that helped convince me to put in my additional time, put in my advocacy as a select board chair for this method, because West East Rail would not only significantly benefit our regions, it would connect our economies that have been sluggish, that have been losing jobs, losing small businesses for longer than I've been alive. And it connects it to the booming biotech industry out east. It connects it to the exciting economic development work that is happening all throughout the state, and makes it so that the Western Mass identity, which more and more and more is becoming so unbelievably separate from the idea of the greater Boston area, from the idea of Massachusetts as a whole, this opportunity means in a way that we can bring back, in a sense, the idyllic small business nature of small town Western Mass a little bit more. It will connect our older residents to the exciting new job opportunities out east. It will help provide the young people who are nervous about being able to find a good high-paying job out in the region, if they want to stay where it is beautiful and idyllic with less traffic. And it provides Eastern Mass the ability, as they are dealing with less and less ability to find good housing and less ability to live in a non-congested area, that connecting via rail and via other public transit opportunities, these high density Eastern Mass towns to lower density Western Mass towns, that provides assistance out east as well. And I imagine, Senator Comerford, that's an argument that will probably hold some significant benefits over there. If you are new to this, think about it through the lens of any other advocacy that you do for your communities out here. For your advocacy for green energy, for your advocacy for housing affordability, for your advocacy for just economic revitalization for the small towns that have so often felt left behind in the public policy schema of Massachusetts. This is a very exciting prospect, a very exciting opportunity to connect us with the rest of the greatest state in the country, really. I am excited and hopeful about the prospects that, because of the advocacy that has been done by the folks on the stage, by hopefully advocacy done by the members of this room, that we can make this happen. That this, on top of all the other transit advocacy and the other advocacy that ties us together as Western Mass, it can be a schema that really helps, at least in a small sense, bring back the good old days for our kids, for our cousins, for our students. I'm very excited and hopeful, and I sincerely hope that all of you join us in all of this fantastic advocacy work.
Thank you so much. Very good. Would you like to add to the conversation?
Sure, tell me the prompt.
Sure, the prompt was, how is Western Massachusetts uniquely positioned to benefit from organized rail advocacy?
Well, I do think that what was just said is quite apt for all of our economies. So out in Western Mass, I'm sure many of us here are tracking it. We're falling behind the state, certainly, and certainly the nation in terms of job growth, salaries, economic opportunity, housing opportunity. And as a result of that, our municipal economies are pretty strained. And as a result of that, our population is declining. So we are really on track. Actually, the early numbers are that this is getting arrested just a little bit, which is pretty exciting, from being a decline to sort of a holding steady are the projections now. But we were on track to lose a significant number of people in all of our counties, but especially Franklin and Berkshire. And that does a lot of things to bring us down in the region, and reduce opportunity, make things a little bit harder, and erode democracy, right? So we lost a congressional seat when Congressman Olver retired, and that was a very big deal. In the last redistricting, we had to struggle to keep all of the state legislative seats in the northern regions. And I think about that from a democracy perspective, right? If our districts get bigger and bigger just to represent the same number of people, it makes it hard for us to bring your voices to Boston. So we want to continue to lift all boats, and rail is one of the ways we lift all boats. We create opportunity, we create a reason to invest here, to live here, to grow here, with all the other benefits of travel tourism, certainly climate, all the other things that come with any investment in public transit.
Thank you so much. So we have about 10 minutes before we start Q&A. And I have another question that I want to ask the panelists, but Ben Heckscher, I feel like I need to ask you both of the questions because you've been brought up by, I think, everyone on the panel as sort of this linchpin to rail advocacy. So I do want to give you the opportunity to say why are we in the position? We've had some really eloquent responses to that already, but I feel like you'd have something to add. But then what I hope you can address too is this. We've all talked about, and you yourself have talked about how long these projects can take. We're not talking about a year or two, we're talking about decades of work. So how does your organization, how do you personally maintain momentum and avoid feeling burnt out when sometimes it's just really hard to see the progress from day to day?
Well, first I'll say I don't often feel burnt out, except running up to this forum. It took a long time to put off everything we did to get ready for this presentation. But I would say, we're in a very unique place right now with Pastor Rail. Really unique. Congressman Neal has been quoted as saying, you can move anything forward if you have the political will and you have the money. 10 years ago, we didn't really have either. Today, we have both. Across the delegation in Western Mass, there's, I would say, lockstep support for moving this forward. And we, generally speaking, have strong support from the governor and within MassDOT. That's point one. Point two, because of the infrastructure bill that was passed under the Biden administration, there's enormous amounts of money from federal dollars that have become available. And Massachusetts has been very aggressive about applying for those funds. There's a project that's about to go into construction next year to upgrade the rail line between Springfield and Worcester, which has to happen before we get the first phase of West-East Rail running. MassDOT's putting in grant applications for additional federal funding to build a maintenance facility in Springfield, very large investment, and also remove a grade crossing in West Springfield that's been a problem for decades, connecting West Springfield and Agawam. And I can't remember the third grant. I don't know if you remember it, Senator, but
I think it's north-south. It's the right south of Springfield, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Switch.
Yeah, could be, yeah. There's a lot of momentum right now with Pasture Rail in our region and the country. There's some roadblocks in Washington at the moment, but we're hopeful that with this momentum now at the constituent level, the local level, the advocacy level, we can continue to push this forward. Now, for it to really move forward, the money has to come from somewhere. You can wait for federal dollars. We may wait many, many years for federal dollars, depending on what happens. But there's also the fair share dollars that potentially could be available in the coming years. You don't have to build this kind of network with just dumping $1 billion into the network in 1 year. These things take time to build and development. If there was a steady stream of money that coming out of the fair share amendment that could be used to invest in Pasture Rail, that would help. Sort of like what seems to be happening now with the MBTA. The MBTA received somewhere about $600 million in money from the fair share amendment or through the supplemental bill, I think, which will help this year, and in all likelihood, they'll be back to ask for it next year. So the question is, from a regional equity perspective, can we get some nugget of that money to keep the momentum going to build out what we're doing here in Western and Central Mass? And I think we can, and I hope we can.
Also,
And same question, what do you do to keep momentum and avoid burnout for rail projects that can take years? So the East-West Rail project certainly has.
Yeah, so we started our organization, which Ben Hood mentioned, the Citizens for Palmer Rail Stuff. We started that in 2015, 11 years ago. And it's been, at times, a really full-time job, and nobody here is a paid advocate, by the way. So it has been hard. But tonight, I want to stop by and visit one of our supporters. She no longer can get out of her home. And so we have to be constantly recruiting. I think that's the hard part, is people get involved and then it takes so long, they sort of stop getting involved. So there's a couple of ways you can handle that. One thing we would like to do more of is have more social events related to our advocacy so that our advocates can meet each other, not just virtually. And that's been a little hard to pull off. I'm hoping we can work on that. But it is a lot of work, admittedly, to keep people involved. So really, you just have to diversify your activities. And that's why we created the sheet. I mean, we just feel like, and I think Ben Heckscher has said this at times, we just keep pressing buttons, and hope that one of them works,
Thank you. Richard Holtzman, you've mentioned being involved for quite a while. How have you maintained optimism and momentum?
Well,
Please.
aside from the fact that my dear friend was poking me all the time and saying, you gotta keep going, you gotta keep going. It just, to me, it's so obvious that this can be a game changer, that this can be transformational for the entire region. I would love to come back in 25 years and see the growth and the change that occurs. I was a graduate student. I guess I finished my graduate work at UMass in 1970. And I cannot believe the change that's happened in that wonderful flagship university, which is really an engine for the area. And they talk about the knowledge card, which is what we are, what the whole state is. We have to, and I can remember when they started UMass and Worcester, and they said, it'll never be like the medical schools in Harvard and the rest of the private schools. And today it's esteemed. I mean, it's just a remarkable transformation in just maybe 1 or 2 generations. The rail stopped connecting Albany and West, and our proximity to Canada are all reasons why north, south, east, west is just an obvious thing. And yeah, there are things in my lifetime that I've kind of lost interest in, but you can't lose interest in this because it's just so significant. We happen to, my wife and I, have a place in Chester that we truly love. And I was superintendent there in the, in the early 70s, let's say that, in the early 70s. And I knew long timers then that said, in 50 years, you're going to feel very fortunate to be here because this is a very special place. They call it the gem of the valley. And so it is with all the hill towns. It's just a remarkable opportunity for people that want to live in the hills, but also want to take advantage of the great wealth of this state in terms of education, culture, people, and so on. And we need more diversity here, I think. We need more immigration, okay? And I'll say that, and that's going to be a real game changer because it infuses an energy that is the history of this country, positive history of this country, is immigration. And we need immigration from other parts of the country and from other parts of the world here. And that's going to change things a great deal. And that keeps me passionate. And this keeps me, we feed on each other. You guys.
Please, go ahead. I see the hand, go ahead.
He calls me at 7 o'clock in the morning. 9 o'clock at night. Go ahead.
I just want to jump in and quickly piggyback on some of the things that Rich just mentioned. Clearly, what is needed in rural Western Mass is the equality of access, mobility, and connectivity, which will help to restore so many of these hill towns that have been laid low by the loss of industries and were bypassed by the Mass Turnpike so many years ago. Rail is a pathway forward to restoring that engine. I'd just like to, if you picture a map in your head and draw a long, narrow triangle from Albany east to Springfield, south to Hartford, and then back west to Albany. That's an area of Western New England that encompasses Ben Heckscher's catchment area. And what we hope will be a intermediate rail stop in Chester. It's an area that includes over 2.5 million people. An intermediate rail stop in Chester is a mere 70 rail miles to the capital region of Albany. So I encourage you to think about the features and benefits of that. Young people living in the catchment area in rural Western Mass that could take a train, be productive, working on a train, greener for the climate, and in slightly over an hour, hopefully be enjoying a well-paying job in the capital region of Albany. Conversely, folks that live in Albany in a dense area impacted by climate change like we all are going to be, might want to reside and enjoy the wonderful areas that Brian so appropriately described. And that would give them the opportunity to come east in just over an hour. So that's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mo, I just want to ask, do you also, is the way you rally fellow students calling them at 7 a.m. like Robert and Richard, or
No,
is there
text them.
is there another way
Yeah,
that you rally the troops to fight for Northern?
I definitely don't have to do a lot. People don't. I mean, a lot of students can't drive or can't have cars. That's just Williams policy. So we just put a lot of posters. We tell people, wait, you could potentially have it better than you do now. And people do join us. Also something that, which is shameless plug, but what we do sometimes is we invite people to come with us, explore the area, and then we, just subsidize that for them. But we also do that with any student in Western Massachusetts. So if you're interested in visiting, please talk to me. But yeah, that's how we've been getting people to get around and also join us. Yeah.
Wonderful. All right, we are going to take some audience questions now for our panelists. And are you going to go around with Mike? Do you want me to? Okay. I think, well, actually, no, I need to do it because you have to be on the panel to answer the questions. Thank you. Oh, yeah, Marisol, you can do it. There we go. Thank you. All right. Why don't we start on this side and then, okay, go ahead.
This is a question, I guess, really just for name's Nick Sears. I'm a Springfield resident. And I think, like most of us here, I am really excited about getting a connection from Springfield to Boston. But at the same time, I think I'm also concerned about the effects that rail might have on the cost of living, particularly housing. I think that, well, it'd be great to see more stuff come from the eastern side of the state. I don't want to see the cost of living come from the eastern side of the state out here. So I'm curious if there are considerations similar to, say, like the MBTA Communities Act in regard to simply building more housing around areas that are going to see more transit service so that we can ensure that people can afford to live in these places that are now going to be served by this awesome development.
I can address that a little bit going forward. I'm of the age where, I'm starting to think about like how I'm going to get my first house, where I'm going to stay, that kind of thing. And I also would prefer, that a Boston rent doesn't come to the middle of the hill towns. But how I see it is that, the hill towns and this region and like Springfield has had like some positive like growth over the past couple of years, but a lot of our communities are in a state of shrinking populations, of crumbling older homes. The rental market in Chester is maybe 5 units, to be perfectly frank, and one of them is in his garage. So like Chester at its peak when the paper mills were around was only about 2,000 people, and we've shrunk to 1,200 at this point. So the way I see it is that like right now, the battle and the fight is to make sure that this idea happens at all. And I want us to be in a situation where those are the policy conversations that I as an elected official need to have, because I am confident in my residents' ability to work out specifically how we want to handle the zoning aspect of it, how we want to handle the traffic aspects of it, how we handle like the noise stuff, or just the fact that comes with, for the first time in centuries, to be a community that is growing again. Those are the kinds of problems we want to see, and it will be painful when we need to listen to our constituents and take in all these concerns as they come and be prepared for it. But those are conversations and fights I am ready and very excited to have.
I'll just address that also briefly. The current legislation that requires that there be a certain number or a certain percentage of affordable housing around MBTA stops is technically only limited to MBTA stops. We would be Amtrak stops. So there's that for starters. I think there's also a lot of misinformation about what that housing type is. It's affordable housing. I think people assume it's like Cabrini Green, Chicago high rises. For the major problem that I see in the Boston area when I visit and see all the new developments around the MBTA stations, they're not always affordable. So I think many of them are quite beautiful, by the way, and they're just gorgeous. Problem is they're not always as affordable as we would need. But I think Brian Ford actually, addressed the nice balance that we could achieve on that issue.
It's a good problem. It's a good problem to have.
Hello, make this about me now. First of all, I love all the work that you're doing. I've followed Trains in the Valley for years. I love it. So I work at Mass Bike, and because rail trails are the spine of our network, a lot of the emerging bike lanes or bike paths across the states are directly next to all of your train stops. The biggest one happening is the Mass Central Rail Trail, which goes from Northampton to South Station. And Palmer, the Mass Central Rail Trail will go 4 miles from the new Palmer station. So the problem is that Amtrak doesn't currently allow bikes on trains. And I know 2 people, one of them went from South Station on the train to New Haven and then biked all the way up to Northampton, took 3 days, stayed in hotels, ate at restaurants, economic development, tourism. But yeah, the Lakeshore Limited does not allow bikes on trains. So the person that came from the South Coast got driven to Northampton and then bike back. So those are 2 of the people I know in my work in the last month who have done this route. So I just want you to be aware when you're advocating for more train stops to also advocate for bikes on trains.
It would be a state-run service with Amtrak. So I'm assuming there would be flexibility on that. Does someone else want to address that?
I don't know the answer to it, but Amtrak's just about to refleet off everything on the East Coast and other regions. With new equipment, and that gotta be, every car must have space for bikes on those trains, I assume. And we're in the 21st century now.
Yes.
I don't know if this is a good spot to say this or not, but I want to make sure that I remember to say that in Chester, the headquarters of the Hilltown Hikers of Western Massachusetts, they're headquartered in Chester. And Liz Mazza, the head of it, is truly a force of nature. She has done remarkable work in our town and the entire region. We are connected in Chester to the New York border by footpaths throughout the wilderness and beyond. And she's committed to history and the preservation of that history. And she has over 14,000 members from the Lower Pioneer Valley, the Hartford, Connecticut region, the Albany region, and beyond. That's the kind of attraction that we will have in Western Massachusetts. And she can't be here today, but she really wanted me to say that welcome membership and welcome a stop in the hill towns, because there are people that will come out and it will generate phenomenal growth in the ecotourism and housing growth and affordability. It's already happening, but it will be accelerated in a very positive way by the addition of the rail stop.
Hi, I'm Arvin. I'm a student at Mooresfield Mount Herman, which is near Greenfield. So, yeah. At my school, we regularly hear that people want to travel to Boston, but there's not really a good way. So I want to thank Senator Comerford and Mo, especially for championing the Northern Tier route. My question is that currently, Chester, I think, doesn't have any public transportation service, and from Greenfield to Fitchburg, currently getting there by bus service is very difficult. You have to transfer in Orange, again in Athol, and again in Gardner, and the bus runs 5 times per day. So my question is, for this sort of like rail service to be successful, I think we need some sort of existing demand to show that it will be popular. So what are the ideas for, like, say, a preliminary express bus service between some of those corridors that also like serve like Chester and Orange, Athol, Gardner, etc., to build up the demand and make the rail service maybe like 10 years in the future more successful?
A very good idea. The economic development study that's happening right now around the Northern Tier is all about demand, projecting demand, and then projecting positive outcomes as a result of the demand. A similar study happened for the Valley Flyer, North-South, and of course happened around the Southern Tier, West-East. And so that's happening. And your idea, Arden, is a very good one. And you brought it. This is, again, another example of young people leading the way, right? The Williams students, Northfield, Mount Herman, all of the other students, GCC, UMass, you want a direct service bus. And MassDOT, God bless MassDOT, it's listening, right? The Link 413 was a result of great advocacy saying, link up the 4 Western Mass counties. What are you doing? We don't have West-East rail yet. Let's get us connected by bus. But it's not enough to stop that bus in Greenfield because we want to go to Boston or other folks want to come from Boston all the way here. So anyway, it's there's a very significant conversation happening right now around an expansion, and that would be proof of ridership, as you're saying. And then the other thing I'll say is that you mentioned something about that spurred me to say much of what's been said is we don't necessarily have to do this all at once, right? Around the Northern Tier, we can get to Gardner, and then we can get to Athol, and then we can get to Greenfield, and then we can get to Coleraine, and then we can get to North Adams. And in between, we can prove the concept improve ridership by having other connected bus service. So this is the way of progress, I think, around these big projects.
I'll just say one interesting thing. I was in the Link 413 presentation this morning, and the gentleman from the PVTA said that the express bus, or not the express, the bus that's running from Amherst to Worcester Union Station today, which I think is 3 times a day, is basically running full.
Yes.
That bus running full today is more than what MassDOT has projected for the Palmer stop when West East Rail starts. So you have to wonder why is the math not working here?
Right, and there's always an underestimation of us out here, in part because the economic models don't really work for us. When they did the projections for Valley Flyer, they thought it would be small. They thought it would be sort of, weak, and they'd have to do all the subsidized, funding of it. In fact, it's breaking records. It's one of Amtrak's best, most robust services currently. And that's the opportunity for us out here, is to continue, as Arden says, to prove them wrong, right? To use these services and then have them be transformational.
I just want to correct something I said. Our service would be state sponsored, not state run. So that was a misspeak on my part.
I see at least 4, okay, can you just put your hands up again? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so we have 5 people left. Can we go a little bit over? All right, we're gonna go, because we started a little late, we'll go a little bit over and get to the 5 questions, but just panelists be aware that we still have 5 people who want to ask you questions, so.
Thank you. I just want to thank you all for all the advocacy that's going on. I do want to say I'm originally from New York, so I'm very familiar with the system that really connects and works and runs 24 hours a day. So this is very weird to me. I've been here for 11 years, and after working in Springfield and Holyoke for the past decade, I took a job in Boston, so I feel the pain of the senators and the state reps from Western Mass who have to travel to the state house on a regular basis. But I drive, so my trip to Boston has become anywhere from like 5.5 hours to 7 hours in one day, right? That's on top of an 8-hour day. I shortened that by parking in Framingham and taking the train. Round trip is $19.50. It's a half-hour drive and an hour on the train. But if I drove that half an hour, it's supposed to be half an hour, it would be an hour and a half, right? So I'm just wondering about timing, like the speed, right? And the cost of it. If I take the train in Springfield, is that gonna cost me $100 on the Amtrak? You know what I mean? Like that type of advocacy would also be needed. Additionally, I wouldn't expect that to be fare free, but if it's $20 round trip for that little chunk of my ride, like it's a lot of money. So it's not kind of worth taking a job that pays more that, you know what I mean? If it's gonna go mostly on transportation, I just had to buy a car 2 days ago that I really can't. Where was I going? Anyway, so there's just a lot, that goes with that, but I also feel like from being here today that a lot of this work feels siloed, right? Like I didn't know that this work was going on, and these other advocates are working on the train, and like we need to figure out a way to connect all of this.
That's why this group exists.
I think it makes it much more powerful, right? And I would like to know, what do you all need from us, right? Like not just legislators, but also advocates. Like what do you feel is needed from us? I can say that I think it could be diversified because there's a lot more people that need transportation that are not necessarily present. Thank you for your work, and please keep us posted. Let us know what we can do.
I'll just say that I commuted on the Hartford line from Springfield to Connecticut. My ride was $2.50 each way because the state of Connecticut subsidizes that line. I know Ben Hector's worked on this issue on the cost of using the Valley Flyer. So someone on
answer part of your question, so what MassDOT is building is they're planning to provide service from Springfield to Boston in under 2 hours. So depending on where you get on, it'll be shorter. So it's gonna be a faster train. What we don't know is what the cost is gonna be yet. You know, one of the challenges we have with the existing Vermonter and Valley Flyer service is because Amtrak at times likes to think of themselves as a for-profit private company. They charge exceedingly high prices to the point where the average person would never buy the ticket. Somebody buys the ticket, but the average person doesn't buy it. We need the average person to always be able to buy the ticket, in my view. Yeah, it can be $150 to go to New York, which is insane.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you so much. I just wanted to circle back to a question that was asked a while ago about like the rising costs of living in some of these places. And I think I just wanted to point out the sort of distinction between hill towns and rural towns that are very, very low population. And then places like Springfield, Holyoke, East Hampton, which are all different from one another, but that actually do have much more serious issues around rising costs of affordability of living and also kind of dense populations as well, especially for Springfield. So I think I just wanted to see if there was like another answer for that question that could address the issue of places that are already densely populated and just that distinction being that like we're working on two totally opposite ends of the spectrum when we talk about like, you know, Chester and Springfield. Thanks.
So what I will say, at least in regards to that, is that, you know, the cost of living and those issues are different in Springfield and Chester. But one thing that is somewhat common in a lot of those neighborhoods and a lot of those communities is that there are significant cost of living challenges. As Bob has a tendency to say, Chester is classified as a tier 3 disadvantaged community. We are a community where over 40% of our residents are 65 and older that live on Social Security. Most of our non-senior residents are making do on like lawn care businesses or like small things they set up out of their house, or they're commuting 40, like my commute to my job is 45 minutes, 55 minutes, depending on traffic to Chicopee. Our cost of living situation, remember what I said, our rental market is 5 units, one of them being this gentleman's garage. Like that is essentially the situation where Hilltown cost of living issues is heavily tied to the fact that even though that we are low population density, because we are communities that are shrinking, there is not the level of housing construction happening in our area to meet the demand that's happening. There isn't a starter home sort of situation that you might have slightly better chance of getting in a more highly populated area. The issues are different and situations are unique. But having a wide array of advocates from multiple different areas, like the difference in rural areas between Chester and Palmer are also significant and important to distinct. But the importance of transit, the importance of connecting this region with every part of the state, where the unique aspects of our communities can supplement and help out communities that have different problems, we believe are very important conversations to have. A lot of this work is going to take many years, many decades. We need to work on the bus aspect of the transit. We need to work on the other aspects that come in regards to the fact that transit advocacy is heavily tied into the advocacy and the work to help people who are economically insecure and communities that are economically insecure. All of that works amongst each other, and there is not a single cookie cutter answer to fit all of that for every single community. But listening to new advocates and old advocates here, we are taking into account that work and those differences to make sure that all of our communities are better off through this advocacy work, and hopefully we can be more connected and more prosperous when this work puts shovels in the ground.
It was pointed out this morning in the RTA session by, I might have been Paul Burns, I'm not sure, but that sometimes the types of transit that are available, whether it's on-demand service, which is getting expensive, it almost made me think of Amtrak when I saw the price, and then you have like microtransit, which I think have a lower cost, and then you have the fixed routes, which are fare free, except in special cases like Link 413 or the Amherst to Worcester bus, where those are considered premium services and they're going to charge for them, but they're proving to be actually valuable, and they're definitely set at a better price rate than Amtrak does. I do think that when they create these kinds of bus routes, what they said this morning was that they are sometimes trying to help people move around. So you could have somebody who's having trouble going from, say, Warren, Massachusetts, where there's a very low population, but it's relatively cheap to live. That person needs to get to work. Maybe they've been, having issues in their life, and then they get this opportunity and they get this ride to work. They get through that, and then they're at the point where they can go to this job. But the transit service isn't necessarily going to provide them with, like Uber style service for the entire life, that they're going to that job. They're transitioning them into a more functional situation. They might move the place the job is, which could be Falmouth or it could be Springfield, and then this is a way in which mobility is extremely important, and transit, multimodal transit, as the Secretary of Transportation in England has said in several meetings I've seen him speak at. That is the way to create a society that can function better, and then people can actually, get what they need out of the society, whether it's food, healthcare, or the job, or they get older and they just need to be able to get out and do things. And if we don't connect our communities better, and we'll have to deal with those issues of cost, the Amtrak costs, the cost of living, all of that has to be dealt with, and we need to be very aggressive about that. We haven't got our train yet, we've been waiting for 11 years for the train to stop. We might wait even longer than that, it looks like, but we're going to keep waiting. And, when it finally comes, we're going to keep going on fighting to make it affordable so that people can use it. And the bus services have to connect. And I think that the more mobile our communities are, and the more we're together on those issues, more likely it is that we can actually win those battles.
I just want to affirm affordability is a major issue, right? Energy costs, healthcare costs, housing costs. And, to the point of housing that was made in terms of rents going up, that's one of the places the legislature and the administration are focused like lasers, right? Sparking more development. We have to both develop new housing, we have to rehab existing housing, we have to do it with public dollars so that there is a range of available housing. And that is something that we are really focused on. And again, what would happen here in terms of, would this be a corollary to MBTA communities? Since this is intercity, not commuter, yes, maybe it will be someday. It's a different kind of set of restrictions, but we still need the housing out here. So we have to do everything all at once.
Just a comment about state-supported service. What we're really talking about here, service from Boston to wherever in Massachusetts will be state-supported. And I used to live in Maine for many years. I'm now just in this area, and I can tell you in Maine what they've done. They actually got a share of the state parking rental fees to help pay for the Amtrak service. But that was up to the authority to make that decision, and they worked with the state legislature to get the money to do that. So the actual charge going, let's say, from Portland to Boston is probably half of what Amtrak would have cost if Amtrak alone was just collecting the fees. So I want to just thank all of you for the great work that you're doing. And just keep in mind that this is going to be a long-term effort. It's not going to happen in a day or a week or a month or even just 4 or 5 years. One of the things that we really need to figure out is how can we put more pressure on the state to reduce the amount of time that it's going to take. From what I've read, we're talking about West-East Rail 2045. That's outrageous. It must happen much sooner than that. So again, thanks all of you for being here tonight.
You guys are the model for us. The Clown Easter is the model. I wrote it this year. I've written it often, and it is by repute the most cost-effective route in the Amtrak system. So heads up to the people in Maine.
I actually wanted to add on to what you had been talking about briefly, and because you said there was a lot of people who weren't here that probably benefit from this rail. And I do think it'd be really nice to have a railway that could go see a base, we could go to Boston, see a baseball game. I do like the Red Sox. And I have been following this for a really long time. I was so excited about the East West Rail when it came out a decade ago, I remember in the paper. And I followed the whole debate about, oh, they get housing, we get economic surplus. But I also think there's people who need it, you know, and I think people say, oh, why do we need the train? We should think about the people who need it. People need to go to Boston here, whether for medical appointments or for work that they already are working in Boston, like you are, or people who are out here because they're students and they need to go and fulfill other educational transitional things, or, you know, government, whether it has to do with, passports or immigration issues. We are isolated from half of our state. And so there's populations here that need to get to Boston. And that's why we need the rail. And I wanted to make that comment.
Okay, this is our last one.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I definitely love that you brought up, advocacy within the for students specifically. Yeah. And I really think that students are, they have an advantage in this, and when they call for things, they really can mobilize. And so I definitely, think while we do that, at the same time that we need to hold institutions accountable. And so when I found out a few days ago that the BRTA actually pays bus drivers well below the national average, I think as we also call for ourselves to have better service, we also need to be always reminded that the people that are running our services are also people that we need to call for, and to make sure that are also included and involved with us. So
Yeah.
just want to say that.
That's very true. Final question.
Hi, I work as a bus driver for PBTA, and among other routes, I do drive the B79, the route from Amherst to Worcester. And what's interesting about this route is not only does it connect Amherst to Worcester, but the schedule is lined up with the commuter rail. So people along the route can take the train from Worcester on to Boston or Boston between. It's also important that instead of just going directly from Amherst to Worcester, it also stops in several towns in between, Belchertown, Ware, the Brookfields, etc. And most of the ridership is from Amherst to Worcester, and it does get very packed on weekends with UMass and Amherst college students. But the ridership we get from the intermediate towns is not insignificant. Folks, even just traveling, say, between Ware and Leicester, and there's a handful of people who the existence of this service, regardless of the train, has made an extraordinary impact in their lives, transformative, that they've been able to access jobs that they wouldn't have before. And I just wanted to make sure with the advocacy that you're doing that a lot of the other towns that you say are in the catchment area for these proposed stops are getting the connectivity they deserve, not just to get to the train routes that are being proposed, to get to Boston, other regional centers, but to get between each other. And I think it's been brought up. I know with the Palmer Station, there's a proposal for, if that was to be built, to connect that via bus to Amherst and Northampton, other college centers. But I wanted to make sure there are similar thoughts for if there was a stop to be built in Chester or in the northern tier of Chiltern Falls. What your thoughts are on that?
Thank you for that. So we are over time, but we're still gonna do one last thing. We're gonna start here with Ben. We're gonna end with Senator Comerford. And if each of the panelists can give us their final call to action, what you want to leave the audience with today, we'll end with that you all have something to go home and to do. So Ben?
On the spot here, I didn't.
You can pass, it's okay.
I would say the call to action is follow what we're doing if you're interested in this topic. And when something comes up, we'll let you know, and when we need need your action, reach out to your elected officials at the local level, state level, the federal level, whatever needs to be done, because individual voices count. If you don't knock on the door, make the phone call, visit the office, they won't know there's a problem. But if 20 people show up, they know there's a problem. So just, if you want to engage with this, we're sort of out on the front lines, trying to be aware of what's happening, follow what we're doing, and if we sort of raise an alarm, please take action.
Yeah, I would say that keep an eye on Trails in the Valley, the website. Definitely was helpful for me. And also join us if you're interested in coming to the Berkshires or helping with anything related to the 413. You can reach out to me. My info is on the sheet that was passed.
But the train advocacy definitely Trains in the Valley. WinTAM has a website. It's been upgrading itself, I would say, over the last 5 years, but to the point where the swag is the best I get at anything I get into. And I also represent the most diverse communities, I think, across the area. And I think that's very important. We should have everybody involved in this, and it should be about all kinds of transportation. So the more we make this an organization that really works for us, and they've been good to us from the very beginning, because when we went to their meetings at like Cooley Dick back in, I don't even know what year it was, a few people in a room talking about some things that we are dreaming of, but then we're writing letters together and we're sending them to state officials and then we're getting their attention. And I think that really works.
I'll just say before you go on, if you registered for today's forum, you are now a member of WinTAN and you will be getting all the emails. If you're here but you didn't register, just go onto the website and sign up for the emails and I will add you.
My turn?
Yes.
Today, we all have the opportunity to bridge the transformation gap. And one way that we can take action today you can take action today to do that is before you leave, if you would see our town administrator, Andrew, who's sitting there, or our selectman, Brian, who's sitting here, and give them your contact information for the letter of support that we've developed to send hopefully from 90 communities that Lindsay and Joe and Paul serve. Forward that letter of support to Governor Healy to put our collective thumb on the scale. So I would ask you to please do that before you leave. Thank you so much.
Show you how we go back and forth. I was thinking of saying the same thing. But in addition, your immediate call to action is to give us your contact information and become a member, a charter member of the Southern Hilltown Berkshire Rail Stop Rail Stop Alliance. And we'll keep you posted and we'll keep you interested in coming out to see us in the Hilltowns. I'll see what a special place that is and why we're really, frankly, leading the charge to get a restoration of the rail stop that hasn't been there since the mid-60s, just like in the Northern Tier.
Ditto, and if you have the time and ability to make it to it, talk to your select boards, talk to your local elected officials. They might have connections and abilities to agencies that as an individual advocate you might not have at this present time. Look at me, we're not scary, but willing to help.
There's a million issues that are really important to me. I never talk about them. I only talk about trains. So that's too bad, but I've become a really squeaky wheel, as you can all tell, on that issue. So just be that squeaky wheel.
I agree with all of my great colleagues. Thank you to WIMTAN for a great resource, and Trains in the Valley for an unbelievable resource. And you have another resource in the state. It's called Compass Rail. So Compass Rail is the name of the plan, of the rail plan that MassDOT is developing. And we often come up against Compass Rail because we want it to be a little bit more nuanced or contain the Chesterfield stop or Northern Tier at all. So you can really also, as you hold us accountable, which you should, as you spread the word, which you should, You can also go to Governor Healy and Lieutenant Governor Driscoll and Secretary Ang about Compass Rail. You can do that on mass.gov and send them an email about the fact that you want rail in the 4 western counties and you want it equitable for all of us to be able to have access to. We didn't talk about the Berkshire Flyer, also a really important service, hooking up from New York. Right now it's seasonal, it could be permanent, right? What's the difference between this rail developing or not developing is you. That's it. That's all there is.
Wonderful. Well, if we could give a round of applause for her. Thank you everyone for making it out today. Please follow the advice our panelists have given you and stay connected with them, and appreciate you all staying a little over. Good afternoon.
Thank you, everybody.